So we have a midterm audacious goal, which is to facilitate a midterm number of 10 million young people by 2032. They will be the key catalysts to bring about that wider system change. We're intentionally applying the societal platform thinking. Thank you to Ashoka for engaging, bringing a whole lot of us together from India, from Nigeria, and it's so humbling when you meet someone from India and they tell you they're piloting with 10 million people, and I'm going, okay, that's like my midterm goal, and they're doing it, and we're learning and we're sharing so freely together because we're saying we're committed to the mission. They're getting rid of territorialism to say there's an urgency. How do I allow your innovation to become my innovation, that others can go far further than me because they were able to benefit from what we had designed and learned. Let us not make the same mistakes as others. Let's make new mistakes and learn from them. And across this value chain, we can close the SDG gaps and achieve the system change. Our continent is bursting with opportunity. And I listened to one of the speakers this morning, and it just hit me, because we have the resources. But now imagine if access to those resources really brought about flourishing for the least of them. If we would faithfully steward this extraordinary continent. The hope for Africa lies in how we invest in its most disenfranchised young people. So join us, and all of us. I think this is the invitation that I'm seeing Ashoka and the academia here today inviting us all, that we would audaciously collaborate and see youth-led change across Africa. Because only together will we not just see that gold in that little girl that I showed you in the beginning of my talk, Grace. We won't just see her gold come to life, but we will see the gold in millions and millions of young people as they step up to be the leaders that this continent desperately needs to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Susannah. And now invite Dr. Kibret for his showcasing some serious work is happening in Ethiopia. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much for every organizers. I'm so very much organized session. I love it. I was here on Monday with the youth, and I love that as well. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Kibret Abebe. I'm from Ethiopia. I'm an anesthesia person by profession. I was working in big teaching and referral hospital in Addis Ababa for 17 years. I didn't know that I'm a social entrepreneur, and I'm grateful that in 2000, almost 10, British Council came to my office and told me that I'm a social entrepreneur. What I want to do at that time was like, when I was working in Black Lion Hospital, I was almost daily forced to handle emergency cases. Ethiopia is at the top in the global list of road traffic injury. There was at that time 194 deaths per 10,000 licensed vehicle. From these victims, only 4% of the victims were coming to the hospital with ambulance. The rest are coming with personal car and taxi without any life-saving measure. And unfortunately, those basic life support skills are not the skill of the public. So if you end up in crash, probably the first responder, the expected traffic policies will make further injury to you by thinking that you are there helping you. So I was asking my fellow friends around me, big surgeons and statisticians like me and nurses, what can we do about this? And almost everybody was against me. The very typical thing in Ethiopia, unfortunately, that whenever you think outside the box, everybody jump in and say that, who do you So I was seriously thinking about it, read about emergency medical service system, and I call my company called Tabbita. Tabbita means an Amharic word that means a drop. When everybody was trying to challenge me, I tried to challenge them back by saying that, what is my drop of contribution on the topics that I am well versed? And what is yours? Let me tell you something, unless and otherwise, Africa, especially Africa youth, think about their drop of contribution on the topic that well versed. Aid will never be a solution. So with this challenge, I was contemplating how to start the first ambulance service system in Ethiopia. And luckily, in 2007, I get a chance to evacuate one diplomat from Addis Ababa to London. Since I'm always talking about this, everybody knows about my passion, and when that person came and stuck, he arrived in Addis Ababa at 9 in the morning, and he need to be evacuated at 2 in the afternoon. So they told me, please, can you do that? Since you are talking every time saving life, why don't you read the thing coming to you? So I have never traveled out of Addis Ababa, probably out of Ethiopia, so, I can do it. So I evacuated that person from Addis Ababa to London successfully, the first travel to Europe. And when I come back, thank you. When I come back, I a bit emotionally, without thinking further what an investment looks like. A very typical entrepreneur. I resigned from Black Lion Hospital. I said that God can do nothing more than this. That if I evacuate successfully from Addis Ababa to London, how dare that I am not successfully take somebody from the road to the hospital with a proper manner, proper first aid. So I faced two problems. I write a proposal. Before that, I already prepare every documents and submit it to Minister of Health. And they call upon me and say that, are you an investor or an NGO? They push me to be an NGO. Do it like, Red Cross. Don't fiddle anything new. I say no. I have this degree, this thing, that thing. And I don't want to be having another begging basket. The thing that I'm doing should bring a better life for me to start with as an entrepreneur. And the impact should reach to millions. This is the thought that I have. So I didn't know that, as I told you, I'm a social entrepreneur. I completely argue that I don't have to beg. That will never be a sustainable solution. So they say that if you want to become a Red Cross, we don't want to check up on you. Without standard, you can do whatever you want to do. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, an investor on the topic, since we don't have any standard, it will be very difficult to give you a license. So I told them, even indicating Kenya, which I don't know before, I told them, standard for Kenya, our neighbor, standard for UK, very far, didn't come from heaven. People are right about it. I know how to save lives. This is my skill. This is the thing that I know from the very beginning, since I was 17. So I told them that I can write the first standard for this country. And I wrote 70-page standard and I submitted to Minister of Health. They were very bit surprised. And the second was, since I want to be an investor, then where is the money? I try to confront, I can say, with some of our private banks to let them just what I'm planning to do. And no bank were at that time, even now, were willing to listen to my whatever impact that I'm making, saving life. Okay, Africans are dying one or another. Tell me how to bring the money back to our account, not the impact that we are making. And they were not in position to listen to me more than 3 minutes. So I go back and look myself, where do you think that I can bring the money? So for the last 17 years, I was having a special account that my family, especially my wife, doesn't know about it. So that I'm collecting money to buy ambulances, and I check upon that account. And when I check that account, it doesn't have even, let alone buying an ambulance, it doesn't have to buy a tire of an ambulance, because I am a very typical African, Ethiopian, who have a lot of families, from poor family. So I start to negotiate with my wife. I have a home to be sold for my vision. At the very beginning of my project, she said that she politely to convince me that what you think is not something appropriate. Come to your mind. So in Ethiopia, there is a condition called shimagille. Whenever you have some issues with your wife and your family, some older people to come to you and say that, what are you doing? So they came to me, and 5 of them say 100% agree with her. Kibret, if you are looking to do something in medicine, why don't you open a pharmacy? Something that we know, that brings money home back. Why you are just, having a sort of illusion and delusion? So my only option is just to have another discussion with my wife with a number of dinners, one after the other. So one day she said that, well, I don't believe in anything that you are doing, but I don't want you just to die with your vision. Do whatever you want to do. The only thing that I need to do is just to put my signature. Then after, I don't want to hear anything about ambulances. So I sold my house. I traveled to Dubai. I cook minibuses to ambulances, bring them back to Addis Ababa, start my job, saving life. Currently, I am the happiest chap, frankly speaking. I travel tremendously throughout the globe, sharing my ideas. I travel more than 54 countries. I debate in so many this type of forums that Africa need entrepreneurs. The fate of Africa is the youth, especially the youth entrepreneurs in agriculture, health, IT, housing, name it. I'm a very strong person in believing in social enterprise. I'm leading the social enterprise ecosystem of my country, Ethiopia, as a president for the last 7 years. We are cooking laws to come within few months or years. Where I'm standing here, I'm happy because I'm not saying that I have a lot of money, but I'm in my journey. I'm happy because I'm facing every challenge and modestly grow by saving life. We grow from 3 minibus ambulances to 20 advanced and basic life support ambulances. We save more than 150 casualties, especially road traffic injury. We conclude and we show to the world that social enterprise is the big vision for Africa by our model called cross-subsidy business model. We save life across the board. We don't care whether we are being called by poor or rich. We are there to maintain the airway, to save life. We are very much focused. We give an employment opportunity for more than 100 people, even though it doesn't make me happy. At this time, after 15 years, I want to talk about thousands of employment. I have 5 very clear visions for myself, for my employee, for my country and Africa. 1, to have a ground ambulance service system throughout entire Ethiopia. 2, to have an emergency medical service system training center that serves the entire East Africa. 3, to have a manufacturing company to manufacture everything in Ethiopia that potentially supplies for East Africa. The 4th one is a trauma center, and the 5th one is air ambulance service system. Currently, we are building 8 stories building at the heart of Addis Ababa that have helipad, which is one of my vision for Ethiopia and for Africa. So, my conclusion is like, in addition to what I'm doing as a CEO of my company, I am being involved as the president of Social Enterprise Ethiopia. I am one of the board of directors at Addis Ababa Chamber of Commerce because I believe in private sector. Never ever think that the government and the NGOs will give you sufficiently the product and service that you are looking for. But the private sector. The private sector should be responsible in delivering that. So in the next 2 years, I want to be the president of private sector in Addis Ababa. I am working on that. The other is I'm being nominated by the Prime Minister to be the Job Creation Commission Advisory Board member, because job is everything. In my opinion, creating job is solving the problem of Africa. So I'm very happy and thrilled to be here. I have a lot of things to talk, but time is the factor. It is better just to reflect with whatever question you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abebe. Can we give them another round of applause? So the next session will be a panel discussion. And what we're doing there is just really delving deeper and having a conversation about how social innovations can create a more just and equitable world. We're also looking at whether we can focus, or we should focus, on social impact or commercialization. With that, I would like to invite one of our panelist members as well, Lawi. She is the Managing Director of Africa-Impacc. Lawi, kindly come to stage. Thank you. And the moderator for this session is Mr. Charles Warria. He is the team lead of Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund.
I think I have a good panel here, so we're going to have a good conversation. I must confess, this is the very first social entrepreneurship conference that I'm attending. I haven't been to one of these before. This is the 6th one, and I haven't been to one of these before. And it shows kind of a disconnect between the private sector where I work and the social sector. That there's not much of cross-pollination and linkages between those two sectors. And I think this panel will shed a bit more light into bridging the gap. Bridging the gap. I totally love the topic about social innovation for systemic change, but looking at it from a commercialization perspective, which is what's been missing. So this is going to be a very interesting session. Now, I'd like to also appeal to the audience that as we deliberate on the panel here, and as you listen keenly after the Second World War, and he said the burden of developing the so-called underdeveloped world, or the third world at that time, rested on the shoulders of the West. And so Western countries took it upon themselves. They defined the development discourse. They actually defined what development is. They defined what development is. And soon after President Harry Truman's speech in 1962, Reverend Thomas Kuhn wrote his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he was a great proponent that development is about the paradigm of things If you want to be considered developed, show your roads, show your rails, show your airports, show your buildings, your structures. And Reverend Kuhn saw development as things. Soon after that, Robert Chambers tried to counter that and said, no, what about people? Don't people matter in development? And he continuously began to propound the idea of the paradigm of people. And right there, development had two dichotomies: development of things and development of people. Okay? So you look at development and say, yes, the people who sit and say, if you don't have the roads, it doesn't matter how educated your people are, but if you don't have the roads, the infrastructure, you can't develop because you can't move things from one point to another. And therefore you can't access markets. If you don't have internet infrastructure, you can't communicate. And therefore you're not developed. If you have poor ports and you can't import, export, you're not developed. These two dichotomies have taken a shape of what we call today the World Economic Forum, where we continue to propound the development of things in the loudest of manner. We have the G20s, the G7s, and everybody else coming together to talk about development of things. And then we have the World Social Forum, where the social innovators are coming together to say, no, but you're leaving the people behind. You're leaving the people behind. What about the people? Come September 2010, and two scholars, Bill and Valeria, wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review, the issue of 2010, if you can find it, for September 2010. They wrote about the hybrid value chains. And they say that the social innovators sit in a unique place where they understand society and issues, problems that are afflicting poor people so deeply. But for that to work at scale, they need the corporate, they need the commercial partners to come and make this work and find a way to take this to the market and cause a systemic change. That was in 2010. Bill and Valeria, they wrote about hybrid value chains. Now, why does that matter to you and to this panel? Because as we discuss here, and as I requested you, find the one thing that you're going to take with you as a social entrepreneur, that you're going to interrogate and say, in your space, what's your path to scale? Because your path to scale is your path to causing systemic change. But what kind of partnerships do you need between the social and the corporate to make that to work? NGOs have been dismissed in the past as busybodies. Your NGOs are draining donor funds, billions of dollars every year. But the tangibility, people are questioning the tangibility of NGOs. And people are saying, if you ask me from the private sector don't even know, some of them don't even know NGOs exist. They're like, who are those? Who are those? Because in their view, NGOs are busybodies. Governments dismiss NGOs. They're like, noisemakers. When you have something useful, we'll talk about later. But in this panel, there's something unique that brings in the aspect of, can NGOs partner with the corporate? And when they partner with the corporate, can they cause a systemic change that can go to scale? As I invite my panelists to give their opening remarks, I want to give one example of what I'm talking about. So, a lot of people find it hard to believe that there's water ATMs in some of Kenya's slums today. That if you go to Madari, you see a water ATM and a milk ATM. If you go to Kibret, you see a water ATM and a milk ATM. The idea of water ATMs in the slums was brought by a social enterprise, Maji Milele. And Maji Milele, having observed that the poorest of people in Kenya paid the highest for water, and they did the maths. They observed the households in the slums, and they said, how much do you pay per jerrycan? And they were paying about 10 shillings to 20 shillings per jerrycan of water. How much do you use per day? You use about between 5 to 10. On weekends, it could double. In a month, 30 days, how much do you spend? We spend between 1,500 to 2,000, sometimes 3,000 for water. The poorest households in Kenya, in the slums. were paying between 2,000 and 3,000 shillings per month for water. Now, the people who know the map of Nairobi know if you cross Kibret, you not very far away, or if you cross Kangware, you're not very far away, you land into Lavington. And in Lavington, you ask the middle class how much they pay for water, and they say, if I pay anything around 1,000, 1,500, I'm complaining. I'm calling somebody. I'm calling the water company. Why is my bill 1,500? This is the highest. This can happen. Now, so Maji Milele started to introduce water ATMs to show that with improvements in infrastructure, the cost of water can be brought down. And they did it by putting the water ATMs. And in the water ATMs, they were able to sell water at between 1 shilling to 2 shillings per 20-liter jerrycan. They had cut the water by 80%. They take the information and they convene the water users and they say, we need to talk to the water sector and say it is possible. They speak to the water sector and the water sector listens. One, there was an amendment of the Water Act 2002 in 2016 to incorporate water users as a structure within the Water Act so that water users can be listened to. Once that was done, through the efforts of the social entrepreneurs, the water users were able to convince the Water Services Regulatory Board to introduce Key Performance Indicator number 14. Key Performance Indicator number 14 on water services to low-income areas. What does that mean? It means that the 88 licensed water companies are now measured on performance of how they provide water to low-income areas. Okay? It didn't stop there. The Water Services Regulatory Body worked with county governments, I wish Mwiti was here, to have them to introduce what we call a pro-poor tariff. A pro-poor tariff is a tariff meant for poor households that a certain use of cubic meters of water, you get it for free. Now, many of you probably won't see it in your water bills because you're not considered as poor. So you don't live in areas classified as poor areas unless you live in the slums. If you live in the slums, yes. You don't live in the slums, your zone is not classified as a poor, as a low-income area, and therefore that tariff doesn't apply. But today, the tariff not only applies. Residents of Kibret and residents of Moderator and other places get weekly water bills, not monthly water bills. They get weekly water bills, pay as you can. That's a product of a systemic change championed by a social enterprise, working together to address issue of access to water and realizing that not everybody has equal access. Now, the conversation we want to start having here is how can that work better? And please, as I implore you, find your one thing that you're going to take away with you to see how your solution works. Now, I will start with Anne and Lawi. First to give us a brief introduction about herself, but also in terms of what does social innovation and commerce mean for Impact Africa?
Thank you, Charles. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you, Vincent, for inviting me. As you have heard, I work for Impact GmbH. We are a non-profit investment fund. We unlock philanthropic capital and we channel it to social-driven entrepreneurs across Africa. I'm also the vice chair for ASEC. ASEC stands for Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya. Like one of the speakers said, it's very important, even as you support social entrepreneurs and you're driving social entrepreneurship conversation, it's important to embed yourself in private sector and have voice and discourse when it comes to social and entrepreneurship discourse and conversation in the country. And that's why I am driving the conversation of a common voice for ASEC in the country. What does social innovation or social entrepreneurship mean for impact? As an investor, and our philosophy of why we started it because of development aid. And as we have had as part of the background, there's so much that have happened, but one key area that has a big gap is funding that need to go into the social driven businesses. And you will find that as in the last couple of years, there is increased funding towards businesses, that are profit-driven businesses, and it continued to increase over the years. But when it comes to social-driven businesses, there's still a huge gap. And for us, we wanted to join and make sure that we are able to address that gap by one, providing de-risking mechanism for these businesses, and also invest very early on the journey for social entrepreneurs so that they are able to unlock follow-on funding, provide de-risking mechanism for them to be able to unlock the follow-on funding and scale, and also provide them the networks and open doors for the next funding. And that's what we are doing. We know the social entrepreneurship is very important, and social businesses are key to social change and the biggest problem we see in our society, be it in education, be it in health, be it in manufacturing. You will need a social-driven businesses to make the social impact. For us, what is central is the job creation. So our biggest metric is how many number of green jobs are we able to generate from the investment or the capital that we inject in some of our portfolio companies.
Thank you very much. There we go. Thank you very much, Anne. I'll come back to you. Next question I want to put to Dr. Abebe. And I like the passion you had for the ambulance, and the decision that you had to make to do what you have to do to save lives. And as you say that's what Africa needs. That's what Africa needs, being able to make the decision. But I have been leading a fund that funds social innovations as companies. And it brings me to this question I want to put to you. This aspect of we want to do it by our own. We want to social innovate by our own, isn't it? We want to create social enterprises, but we don't have the money. We don't have the money. So we have to keep looking for the money elsewhere. And the money comes in terms of investors and these kind of things. And then it skews what we initially intended to do. And we start chasing after the interest of investors. Now, as the president of the Ethiopia, Social Enterprise Ethiopia, you want to be Ethiopia's private sector, president and all. How can social enterprises in Africa find the financial sustainability, the locally grown financial sustainability that enables them to really grow their ideas and take them to scale without feeling beholden to investors?
Thank you very much, Charles. You can imagine, whenever I try to share my experience for youth, they challenged me again that at your time, you were having a house to be sold. But recently, youth, they don't have even the smallest ever house to be sold for their vision. So the time is being very much changed. Actually, we have a lot of innovative ideas. And very unfortunately, the government is not willing to hear what we are saying. In my part, everything came from my experience. When you expose yourself for something, the opportunity will come. So I was having a chance to work with big companies. Our business model is called cross-subsidy business model. We have remote medical assistance outside of Addis Ababa that we work with big companies that pay us in foreign currency. So the money, the revenue stream, that the money we are collecting from them, we compensate the 24/7 ambulance service. So with our short call number, if anybody is calling us in emergency situation, we focus on saving life, and we have money for that. So when I am just chiseling this, I understand that these big companies have big money for corporate social responsibility. It is mandatory for big companies whenever they move to Africa, because they have their own competitors that check upon them, that if they don't dispose that corporate social responsibility money properly, they will be in big media channels. So they are conscious about it. But when they come to Ethiopia or any African country, they don't want to give that money for social services. They mix it with their marketing strategy, and they use it for marketing or any other purpose. So I get a chance to have a meeting with our big bosses, ministers, and I told them, why don't you organize a sort of fund that big companies that are responsible for corporate social responsibility need to deploy that funding in the same channel with the government, so that this will be very useful in challenging social problems, whatever we are talking about. This fund will have a big brain fund board members, so this money can be channeled to social enterprises, NGOs, whatever. Otherwise, even now, relying on foreign aid will never be a solution. I personally believe that everybody is important. We can't really sort out to have a business for every idea that we have. NGOs are very important, government is very important, private sector is very important, social enterprise is very important. If you take Ethiopia, if you have any idea, either you make it purely profit maximization organization, as I did, or an NGO who declared that I will never make profit out of it. So have you seen how the idea is? So that one is in this corner and the other is in another corner. We are working to bring a middle ground that focus impact and profit. And as a social enterprise Ethiopia, our motto is we impact, we profit. So in my opinion, this is the only innovative thing that I want to tell you. But if you take private-public partnership, whenever social enterprises are indulging in any business that inclined to social problem, it means that we are assisting the government. So the government should have funding to work in private-public partnership. But what we see is the government look as if that we are exposing the system. We are not. We are not interested. This is my country is a politician's country, but as well, this is my country. So that we need to have a very strong commitment in addressing this challenge, and I assure you that social entrepreneurs have a lot of ideas, new ideas in challenging and in accessing finance. Thank you.
A couple of days ago, I was talking to a friend of mine in the private sector, and their motto is, cost transformation, make money, repeat. Cost transformation, make money, repeat. That's their motto. It's pretty simple. And I asked him why. He said, if whatever we do, if we're not making money, we pivot, we stop it. You know, we're not in the business of, you know, just social. If we're not making money, we stop. And I wanna put this question, just remind me, Lucy? Susan, yes. This level of distrust between the social sector and the private sector. And the distrust is more on the social sector. That if they share their ideas with the private sector will commercialize them and run away with them and make money and forget about the whole impact agenda. But for commercialization to work, then it needs to happen. There needs to be this partnership, how social innovations are taken to the market at affordable prices. So we also don't end up disenfranchising the poor, but we also don't perpetuate the dependency that aid has created, that people expect stuff to be given for free. And that's the whole, you know, idea by buying social. From where you sit, I want to ask you two questions that are joined together. First question is, would you work with a private sector partner to commercialize the solution? That's the first question. Second question is, have you seen this happening anywhere else, here in the continent? This partnership where, you know, social enterprise partners with, successfully partners with a private company, and they take the product to the market and they both benefit.
Can you hear me? Okay. It's a loaded question. So would I partner with the private sector to commercialize a social innovation? So we are a hybrid organization. Our structure is such that we have non-profit organizations established in some of our countries, and then we've set up a for-profit entity in 2 of our countries. Just because of the structure, there's different laws, but they're 100% owned by the non-profit. But what it allows is those for-profits to function commercially and then also to spin out other businesses. So it's structured in that way. The challenge is no person at the top, or the challenge or the benefit, however you see it, is that no one person at the top gets super rich, but the stewardship of those commercial activities is in a sense housed in that overarching vision and mission of what the non-profit's impact sets out to be. So there's an intentional tension because the rules of philanthropy are different to the rules of investment. But in the value chain, in our work, to really go into a hard-hit, poorest of the poor community where you would, it's the opposite. We go into a community which would be the opposite place for someone to go and do business. But after X number of years, where philanthropy can come in, you now have opportunity where commercial activities can take over. So the challenge is we're not working together. So my short answer is yes, I would, but not at the expense of impact. And for us to say that we're compromising scale or we're compromising impact by not having it commercial is also not true. It's not true in every case. There are certain things that I think the challenge is that we're not collaborating. We are seeing ourselves as different rather than both needed to see system change. I think there are some times where in the non-profit you're given like piecemeal, and very few philanthropists, it's 2 years here, and if you get dependent on me, I'm going to walk away. And so as a social entrepreneur, you're not really leading and able to take risks in solving large problems at scale, at speed. Now imagine if your philanthropy or your social investment pot of money could go bigger, quicker, and really develop that, and then your investor come in and look at how to commercialize it, and we're sharing on the same why. But what happens is the power struggle gets in the way. So when we commercialize, or if we do commercialize, it makes it more sustainable, it makes it more scalable. So if that innovation can be commercialized and there's a market, it would be unwise to finance that through philanthropy or through a non-profit, because at the end of the day, you want more people to benefit from that service to have greater impact. And I think we have to be using both. And there are times where grant funding may be more effective than a loan in a startup situation because it's more fragile or it's a conflict zone. I think to say that you are undermining business by giving someone a grant, it's not always the case. And some patient investment things, sometimes we need to fix a broken system and address mindsets and do things that cost a little bit more, but the hunger and the dividend of that young person who was going to drop out of school that's now a coder, the hunger they will have as an entrepreneur because someone saw that and built that in, that wasn't part of the margin. That is the hope that we have. And yet how we work together, we're missing these opportunities to have sustainable, scalable innovations because somehow we're not letting these two capital pools work together with the same why. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. I have been politely requested to invite Geoffrey Nyamu, if he's in the audience. Please raise up your hand wherever you are. Yes, yeah, he's the head of SB at Faulu. I've been asked to request you to come to the panel. As you walk to the panel, I put a question to you as you walk to the panel. From a corporate perspective, and lately, Dr. Abebe mentioned that the corporates are getting into the space of the social enterprises through their CSRs. And the question that begs is how are the corporates balancing the push for profits and the creation of impact, because they're moving towards support enterprises and social, community-based programs. From where you see it and from where your peers see it, the CEO in the morning talked about how you're now going to play in the second tier, first tier banks. You're seeing yourself as able. How do you see the dichotomy of profits and impact coming together, in this space of social entrepreneurship and commercialization?
Thank you so much. That's a very good question, and I think bank. Yeah. So in terms of social impact and commercialization, for us we look at it in terms of having them married together, because ultimately when you focus on social entrepreneurship and as a way of impacting society positively, then consequently commercialization plays in. So in terms of the various activities, and I would tell you, for example, most corporates and Faulu, in this context, we are keen on building capacity, and one of the things that we've done, we've partnered with many institutions, learning institutions, to identify as a way of building capacity, financial literacy, in those specific settings, so that ultimately as we do that financial literacy, then we are building capacity, identifying, innovations that have social impact, so that ultimately we are able to scale up. As we do that, then we are building, a pool of, entrepreneurs that will be able to impact society. I mean, one of the things that we also focusing on, in view of that, then we have so many partners. We are leveraging also on strategic partnerships. So many players, government organizations that are coming in to also, get funds, so that then we are able to scale up, some of, the innovations that are coming, and social entrepreneurs will take advantage of that. So that, for us, we see that as a way of, scaling up and supporting, different, entrepreneurs that are in that space. Something else that is also key for us is we are also looking at, players in, the agri, space, because it's really important for us to ensure that we are fully secure, as a country. So we are looking at, those entrepreneurs that have come up with, innovations, in that space, we connect them with aggregators so that then they're able to scale up and ultimately have, a positive impact in terms of commercialization of some of those, innovations that are really, really critical. So, as an organization, we are keen to partner with social entrepreneurs so that ultimately we're able to grow them, to the next level. Thank you.
I think that's good news for these social entrepreneurs in the room to, do you have your cards? You can give all your cards so that, in the interest of time, I'll pose one question to Anne, and then I can offer the mic to the audience to put in some questions. But Anne, this is for you. As someone, now heading an organization that's talking about Africa-Impacc. And believe it or not, aid is dwindling. Aid is dwindling, and with that, it provides an opportunity for the rise of the social enterprises to provide affordable solutions to the problems of our times in our continent. From your perspective, what does Africa need to do? How would you, this is Africa, you see, this is an African. What does Africa need to do to scale social entrepreneurship to a level that is meaningful, that can cause the change that we want to see in the continent?
Thank you so much. And I will speak from a social investment perspective, because most of the social innovation and social enterprises, for you to scale and grow to the next level of growth, you need capital. And like everybody have said, you need blended solution. You will need grants here and there. You will need debt. You will need investment, and you will need equity investments. And from that perspective, what are the key building blocks for building a scalable, growing solution across different continental, different countries, or continental, or global solution? One, there must be a need. There must be a market-driven need. You must identify a need that exists in a society. It might be in water, it might be in education. What is the biggest need in the society that you live in? And that need have to be so big enough that that the population, or the biggest population or generation that is being affected by aid, will do anything to access that, to access your product or service. So that's the first thing you do. And for you to do that, you start small. Sometimes when we think of ideas, we think it have to be so big, and I have to start thinking how big it can be, and I have to speak to different big people for me to be able to put put that idea in place. No, you start small. You can start with your family members in terms of, let's say, for example, it's an idea around access to education. What is the biggest within your locality? How does that, why are children not accessing education, if that's what you would want to solve? Is it that they don't have school fees? Is it that there are no schools? Is it that the cost of revision is quite high? They don't have access to education materials. You have to break it down. And as you start the process, you have to know that you can't do everything at the same time. You pick one, and you put all your effort into that. You can add on as you go. So that's the process of ideation and identifying the idea. Next to that, you have to test it out. And the same thing, you have to test it out with people around you. You start with your family members, you start with your communities, you start with your school, your church, whichever social gathering that you have access to, you test it out with. And what does testing out do to you? One, it gives you feedback. Is it needed? Do I have the right ingredient for growing it? What else do I need to add? Subtract? into it, is there anyone willing to pay for it? Because at the end of the day, as much as you're doing a social driven innovation or enterprise, there need to be someone paying for it. There will be someone paying for it, be it buying and selling, or the triple triangle, where either a partner or an end user or yourself as a product developer will pay for it. So who will pay for that solution? And with the testing, it's able to identify that. And then also understanding what are my price points. How much can someone pay for it? And I'm saying this because I have invested in social-driven businesses, and when you look at the product or service they're offering, there is always someone who is willing to pay for it. Like we had even water. If you don't have water, you cannot exist, you cannot do anything. So there will always be someone who will be paying for that cost, and you need to identify where that will come from. And eventually, when you have those building blocks as you're starting, it's easy for you to start, to have the minimum viable product, where you have you're an ideal client base, you have a product or service, you have someone who is willing to uptake it. It's up to you to identify what are your routes to market. How do you get your product out there? And when you have those in place, then if you have now to zone out, where do I start? Because you can't put it all out there. So you zone out, you give yourself timelines, and you give yourself an understanding of how do you keep producing, like how do you build your capacity to produce enough so that you can be able to satisfy the market that you're targeting. And finally, you have to keep on learning from that process. You go out there, you get feedback, come improve on your service delivery, your product as you go on, and become a loop where you produce, you take it to the market, you learn and improve. And it's also very important for you to involve different stakeholders along the way from the get-go, because sometimes as solution builders, we will build something and we wanted to make it very beautiful, very shiny before even anyone tests it out. That's not correct, because you will not know what your user might want, and you might go further along the journey before you make the collections that are needed. So it's important from the get-go you involve all the stakeholders so that you can incorporate all aspect of building your product or solution. And eventually, you need to identify who will give you your starting out capital. Will it be grant? And if your social business, it's grant, purely funded by grants, what are the sources of grants you need to source out for? And how do you go about that? And what I encourage most of social businesses, put yourself in different networks, because it's being out there in different forums that you will know what exists, what programs exist. Banking institution nowadays across board, they have entrepreneur support programs. You'll be able to know the grants that exist, the funding, social investments, opportunities that exist. And you'll be able to put yourself there. You'll be able to know what are the requirements. How can I be eligible? So you categorize yourself based on what you're doing and how you, for example, if you're generating revenue, you know you can generate revenue from the get-go. Illicit capital. And in different markets nowadays, there are angel investors. So if you're in different groups and different social settings, can I start talking to? Which grant makers can I start talking to? Which website aggregates this funding mechanism that I can start applying to? What mentors or mentorship programs do I need to enroll myself into? And what I have seen, and I keep on saying, sometimes you'll hear that social entrepreneurs are not succeeding because they lack capital or they lack information. Actually, from where I sit most of the time, I feel they are there is more information overload, such that there's so much information to an extent you don't know what fits me, what work well for me, how do I know what I need right now and might be ideal for me now, and the rest will be for the next stage of growth. So understanding how you build your business, understanding the networks that you require for you to grow. You will need partnerships, you will need networks, and understanding the source of capital that you require, and making sure that you understand the market and the needs of the market you're building your solution for. And finally, if you need investment, that's where social investment like impact comes in, making sure that you have all the building blocks and you have the key metrics, be it you're generating revenue, you're generating impact. And for us, impact and a business model have to go together. Because for you to triple, quadruple, or 10x your impact, you must build a sustainable business. There is no way we can 10x impact if you're not generating revenue for a social business. And that's why we are firm believer. We want to come in very early in on the journey, provide you the capital, provide you the hand holding and open doors for you, so that then you're able to 10x your impact, as well as generate massive job. As I said, our key central point is job creation.
Thank you very much. My takeaway from Anne's is business and impact. Business and impact. It reminds me, way back when I was younger, I was studying economics. We had this professor, and he kept repeating this author, Michael Todaro. And he kept saying, "Have you read Michael Todaro?" And we would, scramble in the library to look for this book. I was never quite in the library, but it was the book that we needed to read to begin to understand economics properly. And he kept saying, if you haven't read Michael Todaro, you haven't read economics. And you have to find the book and read it. And it was the most scarcest book ever. But you are entrepreneurs, and I want to give you a few minutes to ask questions. But before I ask you questions, I want to ask you a question. How many of you are entrepreneurs? How many of you are entrepreneurs? How many of you have read Peter Drucker? How many of you have read Peter Drucker, Entrepreneurship and Development? See, I'm going to be the professor now, and you're going to be the student. If you haven't read Peter Drucker, Entrepreneurship and Development, you're sort of wading in the dark. You need to read to be able to balance between business and impact. Having said that, please, is there any of you with a question to any of the panelists? Please raise up your hand and we'll pass you the mic. First one right there.
Hello, my name is Hanif Puna. I'm CEO of a company called Mama Leila. My question to the panelists, and I've been hearing a lot, and we're working a lot of the other stuff, is how do you empower the last mile community that has no access to electricity, no access to internet, and no access to knowledge? And as you know, even in Kenya, about 60% of our population is last mile. Most of them are small farmers. They are people who have no jobs, people who have no skills. How do you suggest that we go and empower these people? Don't forget, they are 60% of our population. We can be talking of empowerment in the city, which is not real. According to me, the empowerment is the people right down there. And those are the people we need to talk about. Those are the people we need to work with. So how would you do that? And why I'm saying that, and I would like to put it to you, is we also have a solution which I will not talk about, but we are outside with the standard media and our company. but we have a powerful solution to empower the last mile community. But with all the knowledge you have, I'd like to put the question to you.
All right, thank you. My question is to Mr. Kibret. I'm happy to see you, and the reason I'm referring this question to you is because you know from the context of Ethiopia. My question is in terms of supporting entrepreneurs, and from the challenges you had, we tend to bring systems or supporting mechanisms from other countries. But you know the environment in Ethiopia, the market challenge we have. How do you see the lack of adapting the support provided to entrepreneurs? Because the context differs from country to country, and I know the challenge we have in Ethiopia. So if you can say something on this point, we'd be happy. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Jenanet, here representing Amani Institute, an organization that basically empowers people and organizations for social impact. So my question is for you, Charles. You mentioned that at times social entrepreneurs, which is important to, scale up their ideas and all that, but at the same time, at some point, they sort of lose the draft or they get carried away, by what the investors want and what the donors want. So how do you find a balance between actively sourcing for that funding, while at the same time, making sure that you don't lose the main idea that you had to begin with, even as you try to pivot and meet the needs that your investors or your donors have?
Yes, my name is Peter Kunyada, representing the mango tree. Actually, mine is just to top up on what you said. We had last year a very practical example whereby we are putting up a secondary school for girls, and everyone knows that money is a problem. So we have this donor who was willing to do the furniture, but the building is not complete, and he said, that's it. So we're in a dilemma. So this is a practical example that maybe will help us think through. We come across that I can buy this, but I can't do that in our work. How do you go about it in order to win the society? To help the society as a social entrepreneur, at the same time, not upset the gods. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Veronica, representing two organizations, Verona Huruma Circle and Young Franciscans Euphra. I have a general question to all the panelists. Do we have a hub anywhere in Kenya that takes care of social entrepreneurs, especially young people? Is there a hub somewhere? Number two, the second question is directed to Madam Anne Lawi. Anne, you've given an example of entrepreneurs in the area of water and education. I'm just wondering whether you can also relate that to a surface. And in this case, I'm thinking about care of environment. Like when Madam CEO of the Council of Governors was here, she gave us 3 examples of 3 young people who have excelled in different capacities or different areas, and I got very much interested with the young person who is doing something on recycling. And I believe that that is a big issue in most of our towns and our cities, where young people can create employment if they are helped to recycle plastics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will distribute the questions across the panelists. Susan, I think you take the first one, which was around the last mile, and because you have a pulse on the last mile, working directly with the people. I guess the question then was, how do you translate that into relevant partnerships that can then take it? I think it goes back to the question of these social innovations and commercial partnerships, and in understanding the ecosystem and who you can partner with around you to then build that and take it to scale. So that's the first one, yeah.
So I guess, and touched on in my sharing our work in our talk, we are seeing base of the pyramid or last mile being empowered, and we're encouraged. I think it's how do we scale that? And I think where the disconnect is that perhaps commercial partners or many of us want a quick fix. And so what we may do is we'll go and focus on school leavers with good English that have done maths for job creation, rather than go to the 13-year-old that can't read for meaning, that is dropping out of school, and build, dig deeper and empower from there, because that takes time, because we're not going to benefit from that young girl. It's going to take maybe 3 or 4 years. But if we see millions of young girls at that level, genuinely, first and foremost, you can't teach maths or English or stay in school or even get that young person to now be a leader amongst their peers if she doesn't even believe she has value. When you feel you have value, you fight for what's valuable, and you say no to what isn't. So empowerment is holistic. And I think if we can go into areas and have a long-term view, the impact will be long-term. It costs us more now, but it's going to cost us way more in the next decade if we do not empower, and the solutions exist. I think the question is not how do we empower, it's why we are not prioritizing empowering last mile as an urgency. And empowerment is not, I'm telling you what to do. Empowerment is genuinely creating capacity from within, there is agency. It's unlocking that agency that's there and allowing communities and young people to be part of the solutions in their communities. And when you are strengthened to see yourself as someone that can give back, and you have the skills to do that, to act on that, your confidence increases, and you become what was a challenge or a problem, you now become a dividend that's been harnessed. And it's how do we build on that? And in fact, our model is doing such, where you're not just empowering communities from within, but you're also enabling them to connect with one another and share. So it's how do we break the barriers? Disenfranchised communities is, as we heard, it doesn't have access, or it's affordability. So I think it's understanding the system and allowing all the ecosystem players to buy into what that vision of empowerment looks like and to stick it out. And then to have others to be able to commit. It's almost like an off-take agreement. Imagine if you've got funders and you say, but we're going to commit to first empowering these communities. It may be 6 years down the line that you have a pipeline, but now you have the skills for your factories and your communities, and your leaders are from within. That's the kind of vision that we need to be thinking. We need to be thinking 50 years from now, what are we doing in these communities so that it's stronger because we were there? And I think it's not for lack of potential or for proven models that empower and transition. It's actually, will we be committed and will we connect so that that value chain is such that once we've empowered, there's an enabling environment, there's investment, there's job creation, there's Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, you need to understand how a very typical Ethiopians think about entrepreneurship. I'm always saying that even entrepreneurship is being very much hacked by politicians currently. So there are different scenarios in Ethiopia. The one who is near to the politics will access finance. The one who think entrepreneurship boldly is not accessing finance. So in my opinion, you need to, Ethiopia is not new actually for social entrepreneurship. It is very difficult to compare Ethiopia and Kenya, for example. This is my second home. I very frequently travel a lot. I am an Acumen 2015 fellow. I have a lot of friends here. How typical young Kenyans think about entrepreneurship, competition, success is quite different from Ethiopia. So anybody who's coming there for entrepreneurship should have really work on the mindset of the youth first, without incubation and acceleration. In my opinion, you need to give a chance for a bunch of people to really explore about the journey that makes them happy. Then after, you need to have a peculiar strategy for Ethiopia. Let me give you one example. In 2015, 2013, I remember that there was a competition by USAID for health sector, innovative health idea, to compute between Ethiopia and Kenya. The USAID and FID looking for 50 health entrepreneurs from Ethiopia and 50 entrepreneurs from Kenya. So originally they were planning to have that session in Addis Ababa. But unfortunately, despite all the advocacy they make, we social entrepreneurs are not coming to them just for the competition. So they were looking for 50, but 7 of us only compute. And this organizer changed their mind and bring the session to Nairobi. So they were ready to give $200,000 for each social entrepreneurs. And, they were very desperate and they gave $200,000 for 7 of us, despite our innovative idea. When you see the Kenyans, 50 of them were there to compute boldly, and they take 10. So what do you understand from this? Culture, attitude, mindset, a lot of things are coming. Without knowing how a very typical Ethiopian young think about entrepreneurship, just investing on them will be a sort of frustration for the investors. In my opinion, Ethiopia is not like Kenya. At the same time, Ethiopia is not like UK. Ethiopia is like Ethiopia. The typical Ethiopian youth is thinking like a very typical Ethiopian youth. In regions, very different attitudes. They are keen to change themselves, but they are very much influenced with the culture. So if you select some youth and if they are not successful, there are a lot of people who are teasing on them. So the first is very important. If you get few people who are successful in just crafting their idea, make it really something pragmatic, then the other who are waiting for the teasing will come to you. So we are not, most of us are very much skeptical. Like, if I am not successful doing this, there are a lot of people who are ready to tease. And it is not about the peer group like when you are at young age. I have a peer group who are ready to laugh at me when I fail. Fail is like a success. Whenever I think about my failure, that makes me really strong. You can't imagine how much I fail. I always receive an email. I regret to inform you that, despite whatever I'm doing. But I have a lot of success as well. So Ethiopians are not keen to tell them that I'm regretting to inform you. Most of the people, they say, why? I'm trying again. So in my opinion, we need to have an Ethiopian strategy whenever we have something to support the entrepreneurs. In my opinion, a lot of politicians and other people corner youths in Ethiopia by saying that they're this and that and that. I don't agree. I'm closely, very closely. My 50% of my time is being with youth to change their mindset, to tell them, I'm like you. I'm really working hard on the topic, advising them, coaching them. And the youth that I know are very brilliant. They know what they do. Very unfortunately, they can't access $100 for the idea. Making a mistake is the only ladder to be successful. Our pragmatic new prime minister is always having a new idea, like he have a peace minister, for example, or a job creation minister, the new minister that we don't know. I'm asking them, why don't you have a mistake minister? Let us do it.
Dr. Abebe, I'm going to have to cut you short in the use of time.
So I'm saying that really this is a very important question. We are together, we can discuss further.
All right, there was a question directed to me. Do we have hubs in Kenya that can support social entrepreneurs? Yes, there is. Actually, there are hubs and social investors. I start with hubs. I think Snappies are here. They support social entrepreneurs, so they are still in the room. Ashoka, they have Ashoka Fellow, which support entrepreneurs. They may not have the name of a hub, but they are programs that support social entrepreneurs. We have E4Impact, we have Growth Africa, we have IBIS Incubator in Strathmore University, we have Shadaria Incubator in KU, we have, there's so many hubs, sorry, I can't remember all of them offhand. But I can tell you, I see there is Derek also from ASEC. He runs a hub in Mombasa, and Red Cross, yes. And we, in ASEC, it's an association of hubs and SMEs enablers. And what you can do is just Google ASEC, and you'll be able to see all the hubs that exist in Kenya. And if you're in Mombasa or any other region in Kenya, you will see which hub or programs that are near you. So those are some of the examples of hubs or ESOs that exist in the region. And across the region also, if you're not from Kenya, there are programs across the regions that you can be able to find from. I'll be around, you can ask me, and I can direct you, I can point you to the right direction. Examples of water and education that exist. I don't know anyone knows Synergy. It's our water and sanitation solution. It's doing so well. We have invested in a not similar, but water and sanitation in Ghana called Wash King. They provide last mile sanitation solution to the informal sector. And what they do is pay as you go model. They provide a toilet, they provide a digester, they build it for you because it's a huge problem in Ghana, and it's pay as you go. So the client is provided for the solution, and they will pay as they are able to pay for a period of time. That's an investment we have made in Ghana. In education, there is an ESA education. I had a pleasure of incubating them in iLab a couple of years back. They built a spin-off product called E2Pavu that was bought off by Safaricom that provide last mile solution. I'm saying this because they had asked what's other solution for last miles. They provide last mile revision solution for the remote communities that exist. I also know maternal health solution by Innovate for Africa by AMREF that I had a pressure of accelerating in 2018 that are able to provide maternal health care for the last mile solutions. And when it comes to the Jijenge, actually is one of our investment portfolio that we invested in last year. Jijenge, that in Zambia, who is turning plastic into building blocks. So we are very proud of the solution that she has been able to put in place. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Now there's a question around financing. I think it's important, as social entrepreneurs to build very good networks. We have, financial, institutions. For example, Faulu is one of them, where would work very closely together because we are keen on sustainability. So it's not enough for you to get the financing, because one of the things that we've noticed is financing can be the greatest impediment for a social entrepreneur if it is not well managed and to the right, the required, amounts in question. So, we have some of those solutions currently in place whereby we'll build your capacity, then thereafter prepare you, for that financing, then that will be beneficial to you. That's one. Secondly, in terms of reach, one of the things that we are doing is really, really important, especially to just because one of the things that we do as Faulu is we have a segment that looks at that heavily borrowed on the Grameen model, whereby getting down to those groups within those informal settlements and all that, then we build their capacity and ultimately support them in terms of financing and ultimately ensuring that they're able to also get the information that is required so that then they're able to scale up, in their businesses. Yeah. So I think for me, the most important thing is let's maintain the networks, the connections, so that then those opportunities, as and when they arise, then you're well positioned so that then you're able to benefit from the same. So for us, we are keen on looking at the impact that the financing has on you, as a social entrepreneur, so that then you're able to scale and grow your enterprise to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a question that was put directly to me, and I will respond to it. It was about mission creep and how investors sort of skew the business models. Investors are investors. They're looking for money. If I'm a businessman, I put my money in a model that I think is going to make me money. Okay? But the game is bigger on the entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur is pitching to me by selling a product. You're selling a business. And as an investor, I'm trying to see, can I make money out of that? Now, what am I looking for? I'm looking for your value proposition. What is the solution, as Anne said earlier? What is the problem you're solving? What is the solution you're bringing? How are you costing that solution so that I can make money out of it? Okay? What you need to bring in the game, and in the last 4 years, I have listened to pitches and pitches and pitches and pitches by social entrepreneurs. And some of them, at the end of the day, I just want to go home and sleep. I'm like, we're not there yet as Africa. We're not there yet. And it pains me a lot when I have to approve funding and I'm seeing that 70% of that funding is expert-led. 70% of the funding is expert-led. I'm giving local company years, but 70% is expert-led. They are founded by expatriates. And I'm like, why can't the African person just pitch the solution? Demonstrate that you understand the problem you're addressing, that you understand how to sell it, that you can cost it, that you understand who's going to buy it, okay, and where you're going to sell it, and be firm on that. What they do is when they come to pitch and you ask them one question, they have lost track of everything else, and now they let you shape the business model. And because I like the idea, I don't want to drop them, so I want to shape that business, okay? And then I buy equity, okay? And then I propose a good equity. I say, let's do a 60-40. 60 mine, 40 yours. You're still founder and everything else, but I'm in the background. I bankroll you. You run the business. I make the money. And that's the folly of 70% of startups in this part of the world that they are grounded on shaky ground. You know, the persons with the ideas have not properly had a grasp of what are you solving for, you know, and what's the unit economics, what the commercial value for, do you understand the commercial value for it, okay? And because they're not, I want to advise the social entrepreneurs in this, do not go into it to look for funders. Go into it that you have seen a problem that you have a solution for, okay? And that you can sell that solution with or without funding. When you start it like that, funding will chase you because we'll see you as hard to get, isn't it? And as funders, we like the ones that are hard to get. We're like, this has potential. This can go to scale. I want to put my money in this. People who are begging for money don't usually get the money because then you have a weaker model. If without the funding, you are nobody. And that's the folly of the current social enterprises in Africa, that they are dependent on an external source of fund, mostly not within Africa. And when that fund comes, the business. And I buy it, I shape it, I sell it. I take the next one. I buy, I shape it, I sell it. You've seen around how startups are being acquired, they're going down and everything else, because that's as investors, that's what we look for. I buy, I shape it, I sell it. I'm in the business. I don't know about the poor folks you're talking about. I saw a product. Point to take home is ground yourself in the solution that you're bringing to the market and ask yourself, without the funding, can you sell? If not, try something else. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. In the interest of time, we must stop here, and I want to hand over the mic.
My coffee. Thank you very much, Charles. I know it is lunch hour, but some of us, we are still willing to listen to our panelists. Good people, Tangaza University College is the place to be. You know, we teach minds, we touch hearts, and we transform lives. That is our slogan. And in the process of what we do, we also have social entrepreneurship at the core of the Institute for Social Transformation. We have undergraduate courses and we have postgraduate courses. In fact, we have a sandbox, isn't it? Social innovation sandbox and a lot of stuff for young people. And for some reason, Charles was asking us, who have you read? I read Michael P. Todaro when I was reading economics, but I didn't read Professor Yunus. And he's someone we should read, those of us who are interested in social entrepreneurship. You see, he was with us on Monday, he was with us on Tuesday. Thanks to the partnership we have with Standard Group, he gave an interview yesterday that was very interesting. He's actually banking on social entrepreneurs for Africa's problem. There is something that elsewhere people are looking and seeing in Africa that we do not yet see. And it might be the ability to mobilize social enterprise. So please get yourself a copy of Standard Group. I hope I will be paid for this speech so that you get to know what happened on Monday and Tuesday. We also have the Social Enterprise Society of Kenya, born out of largely the alumni of this place, and they've built quite a network. It is necessary that you express interest in joining them if you are interested in knowing what is happening in Kenya with regard to social entrepreneurship. Join the society. There's a desk outside there. Get registered so they can keep in touch with you.